Hey guys, Kevin is back for The Leftovers, Season 2, Episode 3, Off Ramp, and I was looking forward to this episode. I mean, it's been a pretty strong season so far. Honestly, The Leftovers has gone from a really great show to, I think, one of my favorite shows on TV. It's probably the show on Sunday nights that I most look forward to watching, even though I love The Walking Dead and love The Affair. The Leftovers right now is just knocking it out of the park every single week, and I know it's only been 3 episodes, but they have just been so consistent, and I was a bit worried about this episode, though, I have to tell you guys, because, of course, as we know, it was only going to focus on Tommy and Laurie, and while I like their characters in the first season, I can admit that they're not as interesting as some of the other stuff we've been getting, like the Murphys and the Garveys. However, luckily, this episode did surprise me. I thought this was an amazing episode. I absolutely loved it. It's just probably the darkest episode of the show yet, and it really were after so many, like, after 2 very hopeful episodes. This episode was really dark, very sad, but it was incredible. Amy Brenneman and whoever plays Tommy, they both gave amazing performances, and I really felt this episode was something amazing. And let's just get into it because it was great, and I really want to talk about it. So we start off with Laurie. She's cleaning off her car, and then we see the GR. And I didn't think we'd ever see the GR again. It seemed like when the house burned down, I didn't think we were ever going to see them again. But someone asks a woman if she's okay, and we realize that that someone is actually Tommy. It seems like Tommy has now actually joined the GR, and I was like, holy shit, Tommy's now in the GR, but that's not what's going on. We then see Laurie doing various things. She's eating microwavable food, texting someone, making a smoothie, trying to type something on a computer. And Tommy continues to be at the GR, and Laurie is buying groceries, putting in a light bulb. She gets a new table, toilet paper, and this whole thing is like, it's very rapid fire what's going on with Laurie. I thought that was definitely very interesting. The music that was played was like Whiplash or Birdman or something. Very interesting, and it's just very rapid fire. I loved it. It really shows how Laurie is just this woman on a mission. You can tell she's on some kind of mission. You don't know what it is yet, though. At this point, it just seemed like she was getting a new apartment, trying to restart her life, and the episode kind of tricks you, because you think that Tommy's in the GR while Laurie's trying to adjust to her life, and Tommy is still with this woman and tells her to come with him. He takes the woman out of the GR, and we realize that he's actually taken her to see Laurie, and that place she's back in is actually a support group. And Laurie asks this woman Susan if she wants to join them, and she tells him she's safe there. And I thought that was a great opening, because already we know what's going on here, and this was just very compelling. I mean, most of this episode was us seeing Laurie run this support group and Tommy doing whatever he can to recruit these people, and I love seeing that. Just, it made their characters so much more interesting. And it's not that Laurie wasn't a bad character in the first season, it's just she didn't have a lot of talking, and she really didn't have much of a storyline. Most of it just pertained to the GR, and the GR was probably my worst, my least favorite thing about last year's, season. It wasn't bad, it just, the GR wasn't particularly as interesting as I think it could have been, and it was definitely interesting to see Laurie here, talking and everything, than she did in the first season, and I love seeing that. Laurie tells Susan that there's a bathroom by the hall, but it's not locked, but she probably won't see anyone if she used it after 9, and she says she needs to go across the street and get some of her things, but if it's okay, she'd like to come back and sleep there for a few nights so she's not alone, and she asks her if that's okay, the woman, not Jess, and you can tell that Laurie's just doing whatever she can to comfort these people. She wants them to feel safe, she wants them to feel welcome. Obviously, she knows how it felt when you get back from being in the GR. That has to be one of the weirdest things ever. I mean, you're in these white clothes, you can't talk, you're used to chain smoking, you have to go out of that element and then back into the real world where you have your values back, you have your morals, you can talk again. It has to feel weird, and they really showed that very well this whole episode. Laurie gives her some clothes, and she tells her that her number is the only one plugged in the phone if she needs anything ever to just call her, but the phone can't text, so she'll have to talk, and she asks her if she's married and has kids, and Susan says yes, and she tells him Tommy is her son, and Laurie says if she lets her die, she will help her come back, and Susan writes, what if she can't, and Laurie says, that she could be, so Susan can too, and I love seeing that. So then we go to Laurie's apartment, and we see that she's living in a house with Tommy, obviously, and she watched a video of Holy Wayne in the beginning, and she turns it off, and I like that we get that mention of Holy Wayne in this scene. It didn't seem like a huge deal. It definitely is a huge deal at the end of this episode, though, which I really love seeing. Tommy asks what time it is. She says it's almost midnight, and she tells him to sleep in her bed, and she says she's going back over to be with Susan. She asks if she wants him to make him a sandwich. He says no, and he asks if she found the next hive, and she says not to call it that because they're people, not insects. And she says she did hear of a house in Hackensack, and it's got almost 30 members, and she says he just has to give himself a few days to get himself back, and he asks what she means. She says she's worried about him because they know his face now. They know he's out there, and maybe he should try something else, and maybe this isn't right what they're doing. And, he's saying, oh, they don't know shit chapters, or that chapters are spread all over, and they don't talk to each other. And then he makes fun of the fact that they don't talk at all, and I really like that. And we haven't gotten a lot of Laurie and Tommy interactions. So this was something that was really well done. In fact, I don't think we ever got a scene last year between Tommy and Laurie. Never, except for the flashback episode. So this is something that was really cool to see, and I definitely love that because Tommy's the only Garvey that we've never seen Laurie have interaction with. Jill, that relationship is fractured, as well as Kevin. So seeing her with Tommy really does make a lot of sense, and I love seeing that. And he asks if basically, he says it only works from the inside. He says, fuck Hackensack, and she wishes him luck, and basically says the only way to get them to trust him and the only way for them to trust her. And he asks if she misses the quiet, and she says no. Laurie then looks up something on her computer, and Susan, for the first time, then talks, and we keep seeing Laurie throughout this episode just writing stuff on her computer. We eventually realize what's going on, because, she's asking Laurie what she's writing, and Laurie says that it's a book. What I loved about this is that this wasn't exposition. It was just little facts that we found about Laurie as the episode went on, and I definitely like seeing that, because it's obviously something we need to know. And Susan gets up, and she asks her what it's about. She says it's about them, and again, it seems like a little detail, but it's a huge part of this episode, and I love seeing that. So the owner of the building, Victor, comes up to her and asks her if she has a light, and she says, quit smoking. She says she quit smoking, which that was interesting. I mean, the amount of smoking she did in the GR, again, that's another way for her to put aside, to get rid of her GR self and go back to her normal, self as Laurie Garvey. That's how she does that. And I thought that was definitely really great. So he says he did too. He gets the door for her, and he asks how the counseling business is, and she says so far so good. And he's, like I said, he's the owner of the building, and he says if she needs more space, he's got a guy that can rent her some extra furniture. And, she says it's okay, and it's not really necessary. And she tells him even though it's late, she'll have a check from him on Friday. And he says no problem. He says it's going to be an extra $200, and she asks why. He says supposed to be a commercial building, and she has people living there. And again, this is just because she's trying to make them feel safe, but again, it's not the right thing that she's doing. And obviously, Victor's not happy with this, and he also said the toilets can't handle night poops, which I thought was funny. And he tells about the book she's writing, that money's a little tight right now, and he says to see if she can shake some loose change, and asks her if she has bagels. He takes one, and a woman talks about the departure, and how stupid some things mean to people, and Laurie asks what she cares about. The woman says her family, and she says they were eating dinner. It was nice. And we get this nice little story of this woman and her husband. She said that her husband said something, she said something back, and then while she's talking, she thought of how fake it all was, and she felt outside, and Laurie says it beats the fuck out of inside. And some GR members then come in, and these aren't members that Tommy's recruit. These are GR members that are clearly up to no good, and Laurie just tells them they're not welcome there. She says they can't hurt them now. They're cowards. She crumbles their paper, tells them to leave, and I just love seeing Laurie so authoritative. This entire episode, Laurie has this huge position of authority, and it was just awesome to watch. I did not realize how much of a badass Laurie Garvey really is, but this episode really shows how powerful she is, and it's understandable. Obviously, she wants revenge for what happened with the GR, and it makes sense why she's doing this. So Laurie is in the car with Susan, and she brings Susan back home to her family. Her son runs up to her. Laurie smiles, and it's a really great scene. I definitely like seeing that. Obviously, it was something that needed to happen to Susan, and now she's back. And Susan talks about what happened when she came back to her family, and how she wasn't sure her husband, Glenn, wanted her to come home, and she says she knows he's angry. And Laurie says he just wants her home. She says he's angry too, like her. And Laurie says she's not angry, and Laurie tells Susan her family doesn't want to hit her. They want to forgive her. And I really do agree with Laurie in that. They don't want to necessarily, they're not mad at her for what she did. They just want her to come home, and that really is what it comes down to. I mean, that's the one thing Kevin wanted. He wasn't concerned about why Laurie left. He just wanted her to come back, and Laurie really does understand that. So I really like that, and basically Laurie tells Susan I just read this. Tommy then brings in a former GR member he has recruited, Howard, and he says he told him he was safe there, and Laurie asks if he wants to join them. Laurie continues writing her book, and she tells Tommy that she made a grilled cheese. She says Jill texted him, and he asks why she went through his phone, and she says it was there, and it buzzed off, and she couldn't help it, and she asks if they're meeting tomorrow, and offers to drive, and he tell, and of course, this was the big thing we need to see. How did Tommy meet up with Jill? That's something that we didn't know, and it was something that was very important to see in this episode, and we do get that answer here, which I like seeing. Again, it's a small thing, but it ended up being a big deal, and something I love about these individual episodes is that things that might have been a big of a deal in the last episode aren't as big as a deal in this episode. It is a big deal because obviously Laurie doesn't want to see Jill. She knows she's ruined that relationship, and she knows Jill wants nothing to do with her, and she asks if she can drive him. He says he still won't even see her. It'll be like she's not even there, and she's actually the one that wanted Jill to read the note. I thought it was from Christine. I thought this was something that Christine gave Tommy when she died, and when she disappeared, and that's what it was. But it was actually from Laurie, and I like seeing that. So he agrees. Laurie sees the two of them talking, and while they're talking, she sees gum on her mirror and tries to get it off. It's a really funny scene. And again, it goes right with John's obsession with the cricket and Kevin's obsession with the washer. It's very interesting. And Tommy gets in the car after meeting Jill. He asks what she's doing. She says nothing. Tommy tells her that Jill is happy and she took the letter, and Laurie does see Jill as she drives away, which is something that Laurie didn't want. Obviously, she didn't want to come in contact with Jill, but it was inevitable. It had to happen, and that's what happened there. So Laurie sees all the members of her support group outside. She asks what's going on. This is when the episode gets really intense. From here, from this point, this was kind of a fun episode. A different tone from what I thought it was going to be, but I like that. But here is where things get really crazy, definitely. And I wasn't expecting it to get as crazy as it was, but it really does get very crazy very fast. We realized that they threw them out and put all the stuff in the hallway. Tommy says they can all meet at their apartment, and Laurie is just desperately searching for a laptop because her book just means so much to her, and she realizes that Victor took it, and she tells Victor that she knows she's behind it, but she can get him the money. She just needs to move some things around. He says as soon as she does, she can get her space back, and she's trying to be as negotiable as possible here. You can just tell, and she says she needs her laptop. It was in the office and on one of the cots, and she says she's sorry, but her work, the people there helping, she shouldn't have lied to him, and she will get the money. He can even keep the laptop. She just needs her book. She just can't start over, and he says if he gives her the file back, then that would be proof he has her computer, and he doesn't. So she asks if that's his son and that he wants to go back tonight and tell him he's a good man. Then someone asks for help, and he gave it to them, and he says this kid is an asshole, and he doesn't have her laptop, and Laurie then goes into her car, and she's not going to take no for an answer, obviously. When Victor leaves, she goes into his house. The phone rings, and what Laurie does in the scene is just badass. This was awesome. I loved it. The phone rings. His wife answers the phone. She hides, goes upstairs, finds Victor's son on her laptop, literally takes it right out of the kid's hands, which was incredible. His son's crying out for his mom, who chases after Laurie. Laurie does get away, luckily in time, with her laptop. She's overjoyed. She then sees two GR members that don't look good, and she just runs them down with her car. I mean, that was just an awesome scene, and just seeing Laurie get what she wants was just so rewarding, and I love that. And I really wish we saw this Laurie in season 1, because this Laurie is just awesome. I love it. And it really shows how much of an improvement the season is. Laurie then goes to the store to buy more pills, and she goes to Susan's house and asks Glenn if their mattress is soft. And again, this was something that I didn't think was going to be a huge deal. I think we get a huge thing with Susan, but we get a lot. Susan is one of the central characters of this episode. She says Susan is used to sleeping on the floor, and then a cot, so comforts can't take some getting used to, and she can just tell that there's some tension going on between Glenn and Susan, so she wants to do whatever she can to fix it, and Glenn says that it's one of those foam memory ones that adapt to her contour. She says it's fancy, and she says he might find Susan sleeping on the floor or the couch, and if that happens, she says to just encourage her to come back to bed, and he says he can do that, and Laurie asks what he's thinking, and he asks if Susan even talked about it, and he says he doesn't want to say something that makes her leave again. And this was really interesting. We've never really gotten Laurie's perspective of the whole Kevin situation. And she talks about how, her ex-husband Kevin thought she left because of him as well. And she couldn't tell him otherwise. And she tells him he didn't make her leave. The GR did. It was them that did that. And this is something that, like I said, we really haven't gotten. We haven't seen Laurie's perspective on things and her leaving the GR and why it's happened. And we get those answers in this episode, and I definitely love that. And she's not going to leave him again. They go back to them, and I just thought that was, a great scene. I definitely really love that. So Susan promises him she won't, and Glenn thanks her. Tommy's yelled at by someone. He's following as he pretends to be part of the GR again. He then sees someone in the bathroom that says, "Did you hear?" Then that he writes to someone if they're okay, and plans on recruiting them to Laurie's group. And the woman this time blows a whistle. It doesn't go well for Tommy this time. She blows a whistle in his face. He's taken and held prisoner by some guys from the GR. And if you guys thought the episode was crazy enough, this is when things get fucking insane. And I really applaud the writers for going in this direction. Something I've always loved about the Leftovers is that it takes a lot of risks, and this was probably its riskiest move yet. I mean, when I saw that this episode had a rating R, the rating of TV mature, and I saw the word R for rape, I was shocked. I was like, what the hell is going to happen here? And then we get that here, and this was just incredible. Liv Tyler in this scene was amazing. And also the guy that played Tommy. He's taken and held prisoner by some guys from the GR. He's then chained up to the back of the truck, and when the door opens, he sees Meg. And I did not think we'd see Meg this season ever. And Meg is definitely back in the Patty position. She can talk when she wants to. She can do whatever the hell she wants, and she essentially runs the GR. And he tells her he didn't do anything. She takes off his pants and shoes, takes off her panties, rapes him, and literally just rapes him. And some people could say, well, he didn't tell her to just stop or anything. He did say slow down, but he didn't agree to it, so it was non-consensual, and obviously he didn't expect himself to have sex with Meg. He didn't want that, so she then walks away, and some people are wondering why she might have raped him, and I kind of agree with people are saying that maybe she wanted to get pregnant, so that way she could steer Laurie back, because obviously if Tommy and her were to have a kid, Laurie would have to go back to the GR. That's just something that would have to happen, and I think that might be Meg's plan. I definitely feel that's something that we're going to get back into. After raping, she walks away. Guys pour gasoline on his face, and Meg plans on lighting him on fire, but she doesn't do that. She takes out a flare, and he tells her to stop. She smokes, and she says for him to tell Laurie that Meg says hello, and he's giving back his pants. They leave him in the middle of the street, violated and confused, and it's just such a powerful scene. Just the fact they left him there was crazy that happened, and I didn't think the episode would get crazier than that, but it really does. This is not the ending of how crazy some stuff gets. Laurie then tries on some clothes at a store. She says for a meeting with a publisher, and she didn't plan on publishing her book, but one called and told her they're in, so it's got to be good. The worker tells her that it's 8:49, and Laurie asks what their return policy is, and Laurie comes home to find Tommy, and he asks her who's Meg, and she asks why he isn't at the New Rochelle house. He asks who she is, and he needs to know right now, who the hell is Meg? Why is she after me, and what's going on here? And she says that she's a woman at Mapleton, and when she was on the inside, they had them recruit her, and he says he recruited her like she recruited him, and very much like, and Tommy, I can understand how he feels used, because essentially he is kind of being used by Laurie. Laurie is using him to get members of the GR and basically turn against them. That's what she is basically doing, and though he agreed to it, you can definitely tell this is starting to affect Tommy, and I like seeing how this is affecting him. I didn't really think this would, but already, we're only on the first episode of this storyline. Already this is affecting Tommy, which I do like seeing, I have to say. I like seeing how this is affecting Tommy and how he's affected by all this. And he basically tells her that, this is all fucking useless what they're doing, and it's just not working, and Laurie says to tell what happened. He says he's in there with them, but she forgets what it's like. They make sense, they know something, and Laurie tells him he's done, and what it's like, and she tells him that he's going back in there. She says that he's not going back in there. She's publishing a book, and people read about what happens in those houses, and when they do, they will win, and she assures him that they will beat this, and it's working, and then we get the most devastating scene of the episode. You thought the rape scene was devastating. This was probably the most devastating scene, because this is a character that we just met in this episode, and I didn't expect to feel as much pain as I did for her, but I really did. Basically, Glenn and Susan are in a car, and we see an alarm then goes off at Susan's house. Glenn wakes her up as she pours some milk, and this whole scene, you can just see that she's not really happy that she's back into normalcy. She doesn't really know how to deal with it. She's not used to being at this fancy restaurant. She just keeps thinking about all the time she's missed with her husband and son. And she gets a note from the GR that says any day now. They're obviously trying to get her back. And she drives with Kyle and Glenn in the car, starts to drive on the wrong side of the road, and ends up killing them with an incoming truck. And that is just nobody should have to go through that, but it is the GR's fault. They have essentially screwed her over, and it just shows how crazy the GR can make you and how much of a bad thing that can be, just how hard of an event that is for you to come back after being silent and not seeing your family, how you have to now come back and basically just be your normal self again. It's obviously something that she couldn't that Susan could not deal with and she didn't want to deal with, and you clearly saw that here. And I thought that was extremely powerful. I love that scene, and holy shit, was just incredible performance, really incredible performance. I absolutely love that. That was just, I was almost in tears there. It was pretty incredible. Laurie then goes to see the publisher. The receptionist tells her that she's there, and even this doesn't go as she's planned. She asks if she can get her something to drink. Laurie says she's great. She tells Laurie they love the book, and Laurie then gets a call about what happened to Susan and her family. She tries to leave, but then Peter approaches her and goes with him, and he tells her her book is the next What's Next, a book written by Patrick Johansson, a huge book that was inspirational. I don't know if that's a real book. If it is, I definitely want you to check it out. I think it is. She tells him she needs to put her phone on silent, and he tells her that it's a great alt title. Let's put it on silent, and he says as soon as they have a deal locked in, she wants him and Marvin to sit down together. He's an editor that wrote What's Next, and he has some terrific idea to help her sharpen the edges and get some clarity to it. And this scene was very interesting. They're basically telling her all the things she doesn't want to face. And Marvin says, an example is the smoking. She never explains why they made them all smoke, and she says it's because it was never really explained to her. And yes, they have a story, and Laurie says she doesn't understand, and Peter says he means a story or a myth or can give various ideas, and tells her they know what the GR does, but what do they believe? And she says they believe the world ended, and I really do agree with that. And he said that's great, and her and Marvin will work on that. He says the bigger issue is that they have to put some more emotion into it, which Laurie is mortified about. You can just see the look on her face. She doesn't want to face any of these issues. And he says there's heartbreaking stuff in there, like the lighter from Jill with the engraving, "Please come home, Mom." She says it said, "Don't forget me." And he says that's what the book needs to be. And if she wants people to connect with it, she has to tell them how it felt when she found out that the people she left are with fucking whack jobs. And he says her daughter and the fire. He says he couldn't believe what he read, and Jill she was there because they had her brainwashed, and then they got her to get her own daughter into the house so that they would burn together. And but then she breaks free, and when she finally speaks for the first time, shouts Jill's name to her husband, the same guy the GR made her divorce, and he goes running in. And of course, I know this is all like stuff we know already, but you can just see that Lloyd does not want to face any of this. She's in there because of him, but she can't save her. He's the one to save her because all she can do is stand there and watch. And he says he knows all this because she put that she put this in her book. But what he doesn't know and needs to know is how she feels about it. She gets up and attacks him. She's so pissed, not just at him. She's not pissed at him, but she's pissed that she had to face all this. She's pissed with the GR put her through, and that's just her getting out all of her emotions, saying, look, I'm not doing this anymore. And she ends up in jail very briefly. She's released by Tommy, and we don't know why, but it's not really important. Tommy sees her, and she says that they like her book. She cries, and Tommy hugs her, and Tommy says what Susan did, it wasn't their fault. She was fucked up, and they tried. She says they won't jump out of the way, and she doesn't want to hurt them. They won't jump out of the way. He tells her he knows she's fucked up, but everyone's back home losing their shit, and and she needs to keep it together. She asks why they're losing, and he says and that's a good question. Why are they losing? He says it's because they're giving them something, and he says they can strip it away, but once it's gone, they have nothing to put back into its place. And I think that really sums up the whole thing about this episode, especially with Susan. Susan was in this position of the GR, was something that she wanted to do, and now that they've stripped it away from them, it's actually making things worse. What was set out to be a good idea has now made things worse. It's gotten a lot worse than they thought it was going to, and it's not really working, and I like seeing it actually not work out for them. I thought it was going to, but no, we can tell that this is not working out for them at all, and I don't see things going well here. Definitely, it's not going to end well. So, basically, we then see how Laurie tells them that therapists have a lot of rules and only one matters, to not talk about yourself. And she tells them how she spent the first weeks after the departure just waiting, and she still is. They all are. She had a patient and tell her that something bad was going to happen, and it did. And so the next time, and this is when we really find out why Laurie joined the GR and why this happened. And she realizes we find out that this patient that she talked to the next time she saw her was actually a GR member, and she was the one that recruited her, and she knew she was afraid and confused and alone. The next day, she knew she was screaming her daughter's name thinking she had killed her, and she says her name is Jill, and she doesn't think she'll ever speak to her again. But there's another story, and it's one of them that she has kept to herself because she had to protect Tommy, and she tells Tommy to tell them. And this scene was just so interesting, and I don't really know where it's gonna go, but this was definitely very interesting. Because he talks about Holy Wayne and how he said he could take people's pain away, and he didn't believe him, but then he saw him do it, and he says he would hug them and they'd be okay, and how he knows it worked, and how he followed him everywhere, and then they came to kill him, and it seemed like that was the end of it. It seemed like Holy Wayne was going to die, but then we realized there's more going on here because he talks about Christine and she just left the baby there, and he doesn't know why, and he says he didn't know what to do, so he looked up to the sky and said help, and then 10 seconds later, Wayne was at his door, and he didn't know how he found him, and nobody knew where the baby was, and one of my biggest questions last year is what was going to happen with Wayne, who's going to get those healing powers, and he told him where to take her, she'd be safe, then he said he was going to die, and he says he asked him when, he said tomorrow, he asked why he wasn't afraid, and he said he hadn't been a real long time, and he told him one more thing, that if he accepted it, he could do what he did. So Tommy, he gave Tommy his healing powers, and he says he could take people's pain away, but there's a price, which there always is, but he wanted it to, anyway, he wanted to do what he could do, he wanted to be something, so he said yes, he wrapped his arms around him, and that's true. Tommy just wants to make something of his life, and we can tell from the beginning that's what he set out to do, and that's why he took this deal, and he said he felt everything he was and everything he ever would be, and he felt to get born and die over and over again, and then he let go, and he tells him that he's sorry, he's been afraid to use it, been afraid of what it was or what it would become, but he can't let them hurt them anymore, and he can't be afraid anymore, and he asks who wants a hug, and that's how the episode ends. So supposedly Tommy now has Holy Wayne's powers, which I thought was an incredible ending. I love seeing that, and I don't really know what's going to happen here. Now, I really love this episode, guys, I have to tell you, because I was never expecting this episode to be as amazing as it was, but it really was something incredible, and I like how Laurie is trying to get some normalcy in her life, but that's also really affecting her, just like it did for, Susan. It's not affecting her as bad as Susan, but she's still hiding her initial feelings. She's not saying how she truly feels about this situation and what it really did to her. You can just tell she doesn't want to admit that she is scared and that she feels terrible about what happened, that she doesn't want to go back to it, and you can just see she doesn't really want to talk about the GR, and that's something that she's going to have to face no matter what she does, and it's something that just isn't gonna, just go away. She needs to face that, and I don't know when she's gonna face it, but she needs to face it because she clearly isn't, and she needs to. Susan's death was very sad. I don't know what's going to happen there. Now, is Tommy going to be able to do what Holy Wayne can? I feel like there's some side effect to this. I think Holy Wayne, he obviously was able to take people's pain away because we saw it with Nora. We know that happened, and Laurie's in the same position as Nora, so Tommy hugging her seemed to help her, but I don't really know. We'll have to see if Tommy is able to help them. We'll have to see how that works out. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. Now, as far as Laurie's book goes, what is going to happen? Because obviously she choked the publisher. He's obviously not dead, but she did choke him. So is her book even going to happen? Are they going to let her do it? I don't really know. Meg. Did Meg have sex with Tommy because she wants Tommy's child and she wants to stay connected to Laurie, which I think is very fucked up, obviously, but it's something that I think Meg would do, especially members of the GR who want her back. I definitely feel like that's a possibility, and I definitely feel it's going to come back into play. I don't think that's the end of it, and there's definitely going to be more to that. We'll have to see what happens there. But next week, we are back to our regular storyline. We're going to see the Murphys again. We're going to see Kevin, Nora, and Jill again. And hopefully we see this again. Hopefully now that we've gotten these 3 individual episodes, which essentially just been catch-ups to tell us where everyone's been, what everyone's been doing since we left them off last season. Now we know. I'm pretty sure now all these 3 storylines are going to come together. Hopefully that happens. I can't wait to see what happens with the rest of the season. But what an incredible episode this was. I absolutely loved it. By far, a very surprising episode. I did not expect to love it as much as I did, but it really was very, very powerful. I thought the message of this episode was great. I thought what this episode was trying to show was fantastic, and the show truly is on a roll. I don't think they're going to have a bad episode this season. Next week's episode looks amazing. I can't wait for it, and I really loved everything about this episode. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I absolutely loved this episode. I cannot wait for next week's. I've been looking forward to Leftovers more and more, even more than it was in the first season. I really loved the first season, but it wasn't this. This was not the first season of Leftovers. This is a lot deeper than that, And even though this episode is probably the most grim of the show so far and probably the most reminiscent of the first season, it wasn't like the first season because they've now changed some of the character dynamics. They've made the show a bit different, and I definitely really love that. The Leftovers is always going to be a character-driven series. Even though there are plots in it, it's always going to be character-driven. That's something that I love, and that's something that is going very well. Meg seems like she's going to be the main antagonist of the season, which is going to be very interesting to see what happens there. The GR is a lot more interesting now. The fact that they are basically trying to ruin Laurie and Tommy's business. Who knows they're going to continue it? Who knows they're going to be successful? Is Laurie going to be able to give Victor that money? We'll have to see. And also, her first conversation with Kevin, they're going to end up in Miracle somehow. We know that's going to happen because they wouldn't show this for nothing. They wouldn't just show this for, just to show us what's going on with them. I'm pretty sure Tommy and Laurie will somehow end up in Miracle. How they will, I don't know. Maybe because Tommy has these powers, maybe they're going to go there. I'm not really sure. But I definitely think we're going to see Tommy and Laurie go to Miracle, and her conversation with Kevin is going to be very interesting to see what happens there. But I don't know what you guys saw this episode. This was an amazing episode, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Homeland, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.